Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I will be providing 2 book reviews in one video. Yes, you heard that right, 2 book reviews in this video. I will be reviewing the book Star Trek: How Much for Just the Planet by John M. Ford, and also George Lucas and Chris Claremont's novel Shadow Moon from the Willow series. The reason I'm doing 2 in one is because they are both 1-star reviews. I do not like giving out 1-star reviews. It feels painful anytime I do it. Even if I give out a 2-star review, it feels painful. But I give out 1 stars even less traditionally. And when I do, it feels like I am attacking someone, and I hate that feeling. And so I generally don't discuss my thoughts too much on books I don't like. I try to focus on the stuff that I do like and just ignore the stuff that I don't like. But sometimes you have to be honest and provide when you think something was done really poorly, and I think both of these were really poor choices. Also, the point of my channel is to, 1, discuss reading with people, because I want to be able to talk with people about books that I love, but for 2 is to try to get more people to read from my favorite authors and to get more people learning about different authors. And when I provide a negative review, that can reflect poorly on an author. Someone potentially might decide not to read an author because of my poor book review, and it turns out that potentially could have been their favorite author. So I don't want to sway anyone because of this. And so note that just because I heavily disliked both of these books does not mean that everyone will. And if you did love these books, I'm really happy because I think these books should have a fandom out there. I just think they were really, really poorly done. But I will have timestamps so you can see when one review starts and when the other review starts. I'm going to begin the video with my discussion of the book Shadow Moon by George Lucas and Chris Claremont. As I alluded to, this is from the Willow series that George Lucas created. If you don't know, George Lucas created the story for the movie Willow, which was directed by Ron Howard. And then the movie didn't do amazing. It did really well and in theaters, and it did really well on home video, but it didn't do amazing. It didn't do as well as Star Wars, for example. So instead of doing more movies in the Willow universe, he decided to do them in book form. So he wrote the story concept and then handed it off all 3 books to Chris Claremont of X-Men fame, and Chris ended up writing 3 novels, the first of which is Shadow Moon. And I love the Willow movie. I've seen it twice. I only actually got into it last year when it was on Disney Plus, and I was amazed. I loved it. I thought it was a brilliant concept. I thought it was perfectly executed. It was the perfect balance of traditional fantasy and also kind of riffing on fantasy tropes in a way without being too overt about it. So I really, really enjoyed the movie. And so I was excited to read the book. And I saw the book at the used bookstore for very cheap, and I thought, you know what, I'll get it. And then it's been sitting on my shelves for months and months. I've had this on my shelves, I think, since like December of 2021. It's been on my shelves a long time. Not as long as some of the other books I have. I have had some books here for a while that I just haven't read. But this is one I've been waiting on, and I finally picked it up, and I went to Goodreads, and I saw the reviews, and I was not encouraged. And sometimes I see all the negative reviews on Goodreads, and I end up loving the book. You know, that happened with Sword of Shannara does not have amazing reviews on Goodreads, and yet it's still a favorite of mine. Rune Lords doesn't have the most amazing, and it's also a favorite. So that doesn't mean that just because everyone else hated it, or a lot of people hated it, doesn't mean that I will. And so I went into this with an open mind, and whoo boy, was that mind closed very fast. To begin with, this book suffers from choices. There are lots of controversial choices made in this book, and it's where when you're setting up the design of the book, you can go a couple of ways, And in my opinion, every single way that George Lucas and Chris Claremont went with this book was the wrong way. I think that every decision was an ill-advised decision with the way that they wrote this book. And so, first of all, I think that in the marketing, this says based on the movie Willow at the top, but this should have had Willow on the cover. It should have had more of a movie poster aspect. The cover is a poor design. But that is the tip of the iceberg compared to all the other problems with the book. First of all, that of the major problems is that the book is not faithful to characters and to the world building and to the tone. You can introduce new characters in a series. You can, in a sequel, introduce new world building or a new land, and you can introduce new tones. If your first was more serious, you can introduce some new tones, maybe some comedy in a sequel if you need to. But it has to be an underlying feeling of this feels close to the original, and this book just doesn't. For example, the book, the Heir to the Empire trilogy in Star Wars, was a trilogy written after the movies were done. There were not announced any movies planned, and so Star Wars just had nothing going on. Heir to the Empire comes out, introduces a whole lot of new world building, a lot of new characters, and has new tones, but it still has the feeling of Star Wars and keeps a lot of the core concepts. It keeps our core cast of characters for our heroes and introduces a new villain. It keeps some of the familiar world building and stuff, but also introduces more. It also introduces new tones in some way, but the thing is, it kept the feeling of Star Wars, and so that's why it works so well. This instead throws out a lot of the traditional, with the exception of Willow. All of the and Laura Dannon, the character who's the baby in the movie, so you really don't know her character well. With the exception of them, all the other characters are thrown out in this book. Madmartigan and Sorsha are gone after the prologue, and even Willow has his name changed in the book to Thorn Drumhammer, Joel Hammer, Thorn, and he goes by Thorn for the entire book. He never once refers to himself as Willow. People refer to Willow all the time, but he never reveals really, it's me until later on in the book. But the point is that he's Willow, and he's not even referred to in the book as Willow. So it's harder for a reader to get invested when they're not reading about Willow, they're reading about Thorn. Then the world building, you're in an entirely different land. Everything that you know about the old land is gone. There is none of the old land, and instead you're in this new land, which, with, by the way, a pretty poor map in the book. But you're in this whole new land, and it's not fun. The tone is not there. This is a very serious book, and the humor doesn't work with the brownie characters. They remain, but they don't really work. And then with Willow, he's always so serious in the book, and the tone is written so descriptively and so dark. There is a demon in the book, and it is just goes way into the deep end of darkness. And Willow was a kid's movie, and so every decision made in this book, I think, was a poor decision. And just to top it all off, it's not a fun read. I just didn't enjoy the process of reading it. It felt like a chore. When I only finish the book because I have a rule of I finish every book I read. I don't DNF books. Because of that rule that I have, I had to finish this. But at the end, I was just like, oh, can I just skip everything, please? And that's not a good choice to have. When your book's not fun, when it's not faithful to the original concept, and when also there are just weird decisions made, it makes for, in my opinion, a poor read, and I felt really bad about this. And apparently the fandom has too. There are people who love the books. They're out there, but it seems from what I've seen in the discourse, they're in the minority. So that is the book Shadow Moon. And again, if you love this book, I'm so happy because it deserves some love from some people, but I couldn't love it. The next book is Star Trek: How Much for Just the Planet. And I knew going in this was going to be a wacky concept, but I did not realize just how un-Star Trek it really was. There's Star Trek characters, there's Star Trek concepts in here, sure, but it doesn't feel like Star Trek at all. And there is comedic moments in Star Trek. Throughout all the books and the movies and the TV shows, there's great comedy. But the way that this comedy works, it just doesn't stick. It doesn't fit with the style of comedy in Star Trek. Star Trek has little humorous lines, a lot of irony. Instead, this book is all about setups, putting the characters in ridiculous situations. And because that's basically the entire book, there is no really serious element to the book. And like, there's no traditional, yes, the Starfleet and the Klingons are not battling, but like arguing over one planet in here that does not really want to join either the Federation or the Klingons, but the Federation and the Klingons want it because of its dilithium. There's this battle over it, which is kind of a Star Trek concept, but the way it's executed just doesn't feel like Star Trek. Likewise, one of the other problems that this book experiences is that the characters don't feel natural. None of the characters really felt like their actual counterparts in the movie or TV shows that they're from. It feels like the author didn't get the voice right. And when you're doing a tie-in property, you have to get voice. You can get descriptions off, you can get details off, but if you don't match the characters' voices, no one will believe you. If you start putting words into Scotty's mouth that really should be words that McCoy are saying, as an example, then it's just not a good fit for your story. And I've read a lot of Star Trek books, and rarely does an author get it this wrong. And this is one of the few times that I really think he missed the mark. I just had a ton of issues, and also just the humor wasn't funny. I was looking for the laugh because, you know, I like good light books. I like humorous books. This is an example of it tried to be funny, and it didn't need to be funny, whereas the other book I'm talking about wasn't trying to be funny and should have. So this is an example of them not getting the tone right. And when you get the tone wrong, and the characters wrong, and the plot wrong, it just all falls apart for me. And I've seen a few people who actually did quite enjoy this book, but I'm sad to say it wasn't me. Again, I'm really sorry that I'm having to crap all over these books. A phrase that someone else that I know uses, I'm yucking on your yum, probably. I am so sorry. I thought I don't want to be only positive because I don't want to be accused of being a shill, because I genuinely love 95% of the books I read. Like 95, sometimes 94% of the books I read every year are positive reviews. I liked the book, or I thought it was just a fine book. You know, it's very few that I actually dislike. And even then, I usually give out 2 stars because I believe, hey, the book has some merit. I'm not knocking the whole book. I think it has some merit. So when I give a 1 star, it's very rare. And note that just because I didn't like it doesn't mean you won't like it. And I feel, again, I did this whole video. I'm glad to be able to talk about it and to be able to have more content for the channel, but I just feel like I'm doing a disservice to these books and to these authors. But you know my opinion, so if you've read these books, please let me know your opinion. I do not have a problem if you loved them, and if you also hated them like me, well, do I say hate? I do not like using the words hate, despise, stuff like that. I just don't like it. I just didn't really think it was good. But anyway, thanks for my ramblings here. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.